"Excuse me, ma'am, I'm afraid I can't serve you." Sandra Bullock froze, her smile fading as the words hit her like a slap. The fast food worker, barely out of his teens, stood across the counter with an expression of unshakable defiance. Sandra, who was used to being recognized everywhere, was taken aback. She hadn't expected to face this kind of treatment, not in a public place, not from someone who should have known better. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with confusion. "Did I do something wrong?" The young man simply shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I can't serve you." Sandra's brow furrowed, confusion turning into frustration. "Why? Is there a problem with the order?" she pressed. She had been in the mood for a quick burger, but now the situation was escalating, in a way she hadn't anticipated. The worker, without hesitation, pointed to a sign hanging behind him. "Company policy," he said flatly. "You're not allowed to order here in the drive-thru without a mask, ma'am. That's the rule." Sandra's mind raced. This wasn't a health regulation. This was just a policy about wearing masks that made no sense. She could see other customers ordering without issue, no one being asked to put on a mask. It didn't make sense. Her frustration bubbled over. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath, but before she could argue further, someone stepped forward from behind her. "I'll take care of this," came a calm voice. Sandra turned, surprised to see none other than Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood legend, standing behind her. His sharp eyes locked onto the workers, and his presence immediately commanded the space. He wasn't a stranger to confrontation, but this time, his approach was different. The young worker's eyes widened, his hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Eastwood, I didn't realize." Clint raised a hand to stop him. "I don't care what the policy says, son. You treat everyone here with respect, whether they're a star or not. Do you understand?" The worker, caught between panic and disbelief, nodded quickly, but Clint wasn't done. "Look, there are times when rules are important," Clint continued, his voice steady. "But there are also times when we need to be humans first. Now let her order." With a deep breath, the worker reluctantly nodded and turned back to Sandra. "I'm really sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice now much softer. "What can I get for you?" Sandra, who had been stunned into silence, took a moment to process the situation. It wasn't often that she was treated like this, but there was something about Clint's calm authority that made her realize how important it was to stand up for what's right, no matter who you are. She smiled and placed her order, knowing that Clint had just done more than diffuse a frustrating moment. He had reminded her, and the entire restaurant, that kindness and respect were always the best way to handle any situation. As Sandra's order was being prepared, she found herself standing quietly, reflecting on what had just happened. The entire interaction had left her rattled, but Clint's intervention had somehow turned the situation around. She didn't expect that, at least not in a fast food restaurant. The worker, now visibly uncomfortable, did his best to make up for the awkwardness. He gave her the fries with a small, apologetic smile, as though he were trying to redeem himself. Clint, however, didn't look at him with disdain. Instead, he seemed to study the young man, as if weighing him. Then, unexpectedly, Clint turned toward Sandra, giving her a reassuring nod. "Don't sweat it. Sometimes people need a little reminder about how to treat others." Sandra chuckled, but the tension was still thick. After a moment, she finally spoke, her voice softened. "Thank you for stepping in, Clint. I didn't think anyone would do that today, especially not in a place like this." Clint's expression remained stoic, but there was a glint of kindness in his eyes. "It's not about where you are, Sandra. It's about who you are. People need to remember that." As they stood there, the worker handed over her meal with a slightly shaky hand. But there was no denying the visible relief on his face. Sandra took the bag, her mind racing with thoughts. Was this moment just about a restaurant dispute, or was there something more? Maybe Clint was right. Maybe the world needed reminders of simple decency. She had spent her life in the public eye, surrounded by people who wanted things from her. But now she saw that even the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. Clint didn't just defend her, he taught her something about dignity, respect, and the power of a single gesture. After Clint finished his meal, he stood up to leave, his eyes catching the young workers. He offered a quiet but firm handshake. "Don't forget that everyone deserves respect. No one is above another." The worker nodded, and a subtle change seemed to take root in him. As Clint turned to leave, Sandra walked alongside him. She felt strangely connected to this man, not just for his fame, but for his unwavering sense of fairness. She knew this wasn't just a random event. It was a reminder that it only took one person to step up and make a difference in someone's life. Later that day, as Sandra was leaving the fast food restaurant, she noticed something strange. The worker who had initially refused to serve her was still standing by the counter, looking over the crowd, seemingly deep in thought. It struck Sandra. He wasn't just reflecting on the incident, he seemed to be grappling with something much larger. She debated whether to approach him, but then decided it might be the right thing to do. She walked up to the counter, and his eyes immediately met hers, a mix of apology and uncertainty in his gaze. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. Sandra smiled, surprised by his honesty. "It's okay. Honestly, I was more frustrated by the situation than anything else." The young man shook his head. "No, I wasn't treating you like a person, and I realize that. It's not just about following the rules. It's about seeing the people in front of you." Sandra nodded, impressed by the maturity the worker was now showing. There was something about the way Clint had spoken to him that had struck a chord. It was as though Clint had managed to unlock something deep inside the young man, something that went beyond a simple apology. "Thank you," Sandra said, offering him a warm smile. Not everyone would recognize that. The worker's shoulders relaxed, and for the first time since Sandra had walked into the restaurant, he seemed at ease. "I won't forget this. What Mr. Eastwood said, it changed the way I look at my job. It's about more than just serving food. It's about respecting people." Sandra left the restaurant feeling a strange sense of fulfillment. What started as an awkward encounter had turned into a lesson, one not only for the young worker, but for her as well. It reminded her that even in moments of frustration, there were opportunities for growth and understanding. Clint Eastwood had unknowingly sparked a change in both of them. He had shown that a single action, a moment of integrity, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that no one could predict. And for Sandra, it had reignited her belief that it wasn't too late for the world to change, one small act of kindness at a time. The next morning, Sandra couldn't shake the events from the day before. The restaurant incident was still fresh in her mind. It wasn't just about Clint stepping in, it was the way he had done it. With calm, measured words, he had shifted the entire dynamic, not just in the restaurant, but in the workers' mindset as well. Sandra knew Clint wasn't just a Hollywood icon. He was someone who understood the power of small acts, the kind of person who could change lives with nothing more than his presence. It wasn't long before Sandra saw the story of what happened, the previous day trending online. She hadn't expected the incident to blow up the way it did. News outlets picked up on Clint's quiet intervention, and soon, people were applauding his calm but firm handling of the situation. The hashtag Dr. Eastwood moment was trending, with people from all walks of life sharing their stories of standing up for what's right, even when it wasn't easy. The young worker from the fast food joint appeared in several interviews, speaking about how Clint's words had resonated with him. "He didn't just teach me about respecting customers," the worker said on live television. "He taught me about respecting myself, about seeing people as human beings first, not just as their titles or their roles." For Sandra, seeing this ripple effect was a revelation. It reminded her of why she loved acting in the first place, to tell stories that had meaning, that could shape the way people thought and felt. Now, though, it was Clint's quiet example that was teaching her more about leadership than any role she'd ever played. She picked up the phone and called him later that day. When he answered, his voice, as usual, was low and composed. "Clint, it's Sandra," she said. "I just wanted to say thank you again for what you did. It's not just about the restaurant. It's about what it sparked in the people around you. Clint's chuckle came through the phone. I didn't do anything special, Sandra. Just did what any decent person would have done. She paused, reflecting on his words. I'm not so sure. What you did didn't just change the worker, it changed the whole atmosphere. And it got me thinking. Maybe I've been missing something. The world is in desperate need of people who just do what's right no matter what. Yeah. Clint agreed, his voice thoughtful. It's easy to forget. But if we all took a moment to remember, maybe we'd start seeing things a little differently. Sandra nodded even though he couldn't see her. I'm going to try to remember that, Clint, every day. When they hung up, Sandra felt a quiet sense of peace. It wasn't every day that you encountered someone who could make you see the world through different eyes. Clint had done that for her. And as the world continued to buzz about the incident, Sandra couldn't help but think that maybe the most powerful moments weren't the ones that were broadcasted on the big screen, but the ones that happened. In real life, with no audience except for the people who mattered. A week passed, and the world continued to buzz about Clint Eastwood's unexpected intervention at the fast food restaurant. What started as a simple act of kindness had spiraled into a global movement. People were sharing their own stories of standing up for others, speaking out against injustice, and refusing to let the small moments of life pass unnoticed. Clint's quiet humility had ignited something within people, a desire to be better, to be kinder. Sandra couldn't help but be drawn to the impact it had on the world around her. As the press continued to cover the event, she found herself reflecting on the power of one person's actions to change everything. But it wasn't just the movement that was on her mind. Sandra realized that her perspective had shifted too. She began taking more active roles in projects that focused on social justice and empowerment. No longer content to simply be a bystander in the world, Sandra dove into volunteer work, speaking engagements, and community outreach programs. She wasn't just using her platform for entertainment, she was using it to inspire real change. And every time she spoke, every time she stood up for what was right, she thought of Clint's words. It's about who you are. People need to remember that. As the media storm settled and the world moved on to the next story, Sandra received an unexpected message. It was from the young fast food worker who had originally refused to serve her. His name was Chris, and he'd tracked her down on social media. I just wanted to thank you again, his message read. What you said to me that day really stuck with me. I've been going back to school, working toward my GED, and I'm determined to be someone who stands up for others, just like you and Clint did. Sandra's heart swelled. She had no idea that one small moment could set someone on such a powerful course. But then the real surprise came. In a follow-up message, Chris wrote, "And I've been saving up for something big. I don't know if I'll ever meet Clint again, but I wanted to let you know that I've enrolled in a car repair program. I'm planning to open my own auto shop one day." Clint's words gave me the confidence to believe in myself. Sandra was speechless. She never imagined that her simple visit to the restaurant, combined with Clint's intervention, would create such a far-reaching impact. This was the kind of ripple effect she had always hoped her work could inspire. One small moment of kindness, one conversation, one person standing up for another. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about creating a chain of events that could alter lives for the better. She immediately called Clint. "Clint, you won't believe this," she said as soon as he picked up. "Chris, the guy who refused to serve me, he's enrolled in a car repair program. He's going after his dream of opening his own shop. Can you believe that?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Clint spoke. "You never know what impact you're going to have. You just do what's right and the rest takes care of itself." Sandra smiled to herself. "You're right. It's about doing what's right, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with." The story of that fast food encounter had ended, but the ripples it created continued to spread. Sandra couldn't help but think that sometimes the greatest moments of change weren't the ones that grabbed headlines. They were the ones that quietly shifted hearts, one person at a time.